So I'm gonna kind of weave around a little bit because there's some juicy stuff that I don't want to like start it off with. I want to get people waiting a little bit later. I want you to wait a little bit later for the juicy stuff. But I do want to talk about how we met in Miami.
Hmm.
And we met at FIU while we
Hmm.
were finishing our music degrees.
Yeah, it might have been right around the same time. For me, it was when I was starting, but it might have been when you started taking your music classes. Because I remember our first core music classes being together. If I'm not mistaken, I started 2010, and
Oh
so I
no,
started right
no,
away with
that is
maybe towards the end of your stuff.
yeah. Towards the beginning, I went there and I think I started in. Actually, no, I'm not sure. I
Hmm.
feel like 2010 sounds so far away.
Pretty accurate. I mean, for sure we had some. Definitely, we were in forums together. Music ed
Hmm.
forums. And what might be the marker, whoever was in charge of the music ed department there. If it was Kathy Benedict, then we did spend some time together. Before her, I think it was Dugay, maybe. um
I don't
I don't know if you spent
remember.
any time with Kerstetter.
No, these are all names that are familiar. I said I was there when uh Kathy Benedict was coming
Mm-hmm.
in. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, the point is
Anyways.
that we met while we were in this very in this music moment of our lives. And you were studying music ed, right? You
At the
studied
time,
music
yep.
ed?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened after you left? Like how did that
Mm-hmm.
evolve? Because I know you're a conductor now and you're living in
Mm-hmm.
SF. So what was that whole journey?
Yeah. I always knew that I wanted to conduct, and do this since I was 15, 16 years old. I had the opportunity to work with our marching band in high school, and I got a lot of podium time. And I thought to myself, I could do this for the rest of my life. I love this. And I learned the clarinet just so that I can play in orchestras and engage with string playing because I'm a saxophonist originally, which is a little bit of a black sheep for the orchestra world, but it's big, in the band world. The saxophone is like the son of the band literature, while the violin is the son of the orchestra literature, and the clarinet is um, kind of like the grandson, or really, if the violin is the father of the orchestra, then the clarinet is the son. So I learned clarinet. In summary, I got to play and got a chance to spend a lot of time leading from the podium in high school. So before I even got to college, I said to myself, "Oh, this is what I want to do. I don't even need a degree right now. I'm so ready to just start." And then I ran into people like Kathy Benedict that really changed my life and reframed why we do what we do and how problematic some of the models that we grew up in were. Hopefully you can hear me okay and there's not a lot of background noise.
Yeah.
Got a few roomies, they're downstairs, but I got these nice headphones that just connect to your body and it's just vibrational.
Yeah.
So yeah, she kind of rocked my world a bit. I started to spend more time digging into philosophy. She opened me up to pedagogy of the oppressed, and ultimately this concept that there are many different ways, and that sometimes Western classical traditions can be very stifling in terms of individual identities.
Mm.
So at the core of everything, um, that really rocked me and eventually got me involved in leading a lot of informal experiences, rock ensembles, pop ensembles. Those were all part of what I offered my students when I finally started teaching. And there was a certain amount of pressure to just continue to do the large ensemble stuff versus also the small and progressive and modern stuff. And so my whole life I've been kind of balancing these two ever since I started my career. So I taught for a number of years in the school system. I taught middle school and high school. And then I said to myself, I'm still not doing the thing that I really wanted to do, or I'm not going after it like fully the way that I imagined I would when I was in high school. So I took some stock. Right around this time, I did my yoga teacher training, right around year 4 or 5 of teaching high school. And I was already practicing for a while and going to these classes for years. I said to myself, wow, this has been a really beautiful space for me to figure some of these things out and to be able to like go after the things that I'm really passionate about and not worry about what other people say and all the things that we learn um, through through the different limbs of yoga ultimately. And so ultimately I started to ask myself, what is it that I desire? Am I going after it? Am I not going after it? And what does that need to start looking like? Am I driving my own bus, or am I just a backseat driver in somebody else's bus? This was all in a lot of ways um, uh, a result of the seeds that Kathy Benedict and some of my mentors planted during my music education degree initially. So much of what I was doing and so many ways in which I was operating were based on these many different models as to how I could look. So once I knew there were choices, why wouldn't I make that personal for myself in my own education? So I went and around this time, I also got a master's degree in music ed. And then I went back to school altogether, and I got another master's degree in orchestral conducting to really just go after it right at FIU. And then after that, I was fortunate enough to get into a doctoral program. They gave me scholarship, and I went to Indiana. I studied in a small town, Muncie, Indiana, Ball State University, chirp, chirp. And I got a chance to continue to learn. And my secondary focus was in entrepreneurship and music. So that equipped me with a number of skills from an arts administrator point of view, which I've been using quite a bit. And now I'm in just I've got a dream job where I'm working in as an administrator. I'm also leading a youth orchestra, and so it's all the things that I've been working towards, and I have the flexibility to continue diving into these other areas of my life that are so important to me. So music and wellness, in a way, have kind of just um, morphed into what is a very personal practice for me, personal outlets, and hopefully the help that they've brought me, I can share that with other people, and hopefully it becomes healthier outlets for them, as opposed to um, maybe some less appropriate. I keep using the word outlets, um, but coping for me, music and wellness has really helped with my own coping, and so hopefully folks can also see that and learn how to do that.
Mm. You got a really rich musical journey. And then I was seeing little pieces as you were telling the story, like little clues that give me a glimpse into this other path or complementary, harmonious path of wellness and yoga. And when you mentioned that something about individuality and just finding your own identity instead of being stifled into this way of doing things. Yeah. What, how did you, where does yoga come in? How did that happen?
Initially, it started when I was going through a tough time in college. I was struggling with a bit of a heartbreak, but it was one that wasn't super authentic. It was almost a little bit of an illusion, me not really operating in like a healthy way. It was really complicated and not true at its core. College can be a tricky time for a lot of people. Just feeling very anxious in my body. Didn't really know what to do with myself at that time. Didn't have healthy coping mechanism at all. Um, and and so I found candlelight meditation. I was on YouTube, and that stuck with me, and eventually that transitioned to a movement asana practice. Once I started teaching, it got really busy, and then without a doubt, towards the end of my first year teaching, which was in elementary school at the time, up in Broward, or down in Broward, where am I right now? Um, I started studying with Melissa West online. She's a flautist, and she's got a great YouTube channel, and she teaches yoga. But she's got a music degree in flute, which was an interesting connection. Not sure how much it made its way into the practice, but I was with Melissa almost every afternoon. I had this, I was like living out of a garage kind of thing. So I would go to the back. There was a nice lake. I'd set up the mat, and that'd be my practice. But before that, I remember I was like drinking and just had all these unhealthy coping ways, mechanisms for dealing with the job, which was a beautiful job, working. It was like K-5, and I had a middle school band after school that met. So that was kind of a glimpse of this. So my second year teaching, I started teaching high school. and middle school. I was at two locations, and that was just wild. The whirlwind. I didn't have enough time to practice the way I was before. And at the end of the year, one of the teachers at the school gave me a 1 month free to Green Monkey. So, and that no Green Monkey is no longer here anymore. It's evolved into Modern Ohm. But that was a special time for me that month. That was my first in studio experience. Eventually, I found after the month ended, I said, I got to keep shopping around. So I went to a hot yoga place, traditionally Bikram at the time. I almost stayed there, and so I got to keep shopping. And then I found Prana Yoga, which was in Coral Gables, which is also no longer there, unfortunately. That's also evolved, and some of the teachers have Suva Yoga now, which is different. But that's where I met my teacher and my teachers. And so I was there for a number of years, learning with them, consistent with my practice. It was right a few blocks away from school, so I would finish up, head there, and became a big part of my life. Got certified there, and that's a little bit of what got me into teaching, and then that's also evolved since then.
Wow, rich in both ways. I love how it just came to you, and someone, who is this person that just gave you a month free?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember her name, but she was married to another teacher that was at the school, and she was a consistent yogi at Green Monkey already. She was a part of that community, so she
Okay.
might have also been teaching. And there was another teacher, Virginia Ansaldi, that I think also taught at Green Monkey, that was also a teacher at the same school that I was at the time.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, that's a
Yeah,
great
small
gift.
world. Yeah, now I think she's got a nonprofit that goes into schools and teaches yoga after schools in Miami-Dade.
Cool. So speaking of Miami-Dade, what a great segue. Just to get into some of the juiciness. I mean, I love Miami. I am a Miamian. You're a Miamian too, right? Were you born in Miami?
I am a Miamian, yeah. Same
Yeah,
here, born and
native
raised.
Miami. Yeah.
Yeah, family's from Cuba, and I was born there, my sister and I.
Okay. There's a lot to love about it. There's a lot to love. The culture, the spice, the passion, the food, the croquetas. I miss the croquetas so much.
Especially the croquetas. Yeah, that's the first word that comes to mind.
Yeah. But I mean, there is also, and I'm grateful that there is this other piece that we were talking before we started recording about. We didn't use these words, but essentially the way I'm interpreting is you have to know what you're not in order to know what you are, and you need to experience those things. And Miami is a great place to crave authenticity, because sometimes it's hard to find. Yeah, would you say that's true?
Definitely. There's so much of everything, which is really lovely. I feel like where I am now is like that. Where I was before in Indiana, not so much. But there's Miami doesn't have the best rap, but it also has some really beautiful things that are part of it too. So there's a little bit of everything, and it depends on who you're hanging out with, what you're looking for. I have a bad habit of discovering all the beautiful things before I leave a place, So I'm hoping to dip into some of the really hardy here in the East Bay area before I eventually, go. Hopefully I can be here long, and this is sustainable because it's so darn expensive, like Miami. So yes, going back.
So, I mean, one of the things here is, because we talked about finding that authentic group or community, and in the wellness space, I mean, just something, what are some of the dangers of performative wellness, I guess? And I think in many ways we've all performed, at least at first, because you're finding your way and you're just like, what is this? How does this work? Okay, I'm just going to, do what everyone else is doing. And you have to just hope and trust that the people who you found are going to be guiding you in the right direction. And sometimes they are, have so much reverence for Kathy Benedict. But then sometimes you don't, and you have to find your own way. So can you share some of what that has been like for you?
Mm-hmm. So I just mentioned how difficult it was for me to move on from, or discovering all these really great things towards the end of my time somewhere and then having to move on. So at the time, it was really hard for me to move on. I said to myself, "Oh, am I making the wrong decision? Should I go to Indiana? Should I move away and go after this dream that I've had for all of my life? Because I have all this great community, and I have all these loved ones, and that's still the case, but that's also evolved over the years. And now I look back on that, which I think is part of the bigger picture, and I say, well, good thing I left, in some ways, because those folks are always going to be there for you, or the ones that are real, all the way through. And you can kind of sense that, and maybe our relationships evolve over time, but for whatever reason at the time, some of those connections really served me in very meaningful ways. And however, there is going back to your point, I think we all sometimes maybe fall into that those performative patterns, and we're operating from a place of spiritual bypassing. And I think the big issue is that we're not actually doing the hard work. Um, and in a way, we're just reaping all the great benefits that go with being part of a community of folks that do. And then I also ask myself, how much of the hardy work is actually done in solitude. And only we can actually do that. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing. And yeah, again, you can find a little bit of everything. Sometimes there's all sorts of people that offer all sorts of different things down south. They refer to Miami, and people think of Miami as like the most northern part and tip of Central and South America, because it is so diverse and you can explore and find so much. So sometimes you just have to be careful with the kinds of circles that we put ourselves into. There are specific individuals that I love to spend a lot of time with when I'm down there, that are just very authentic, cultural bearers in a lot of ways of their own tradition, that share in very transparent ways, and to a certain extent, don't try to mix things up too much, which might sound like it goes contrary to us operating from our own identity. Um, as a yogi, as someone who appreciates indigenous traditions in particular, there's a certain level of traditionalism that I also appreciate, and I think there's a lot of safety that comes with. I've heard a Lakota elder one time describe it as, it's like an outlet that's plugged into the wall. As soon as you start to run an extension cord away from it and you start to play around with the tradition, and it starts to not be as potent, not be as strong. I'm still figuring out what that means for me personally. And again, for whatever reason, no matter how far it is away from the outlet, it serves different individuals. But I think there needs to be a certain level of reverence. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think what we're moved to is when we know someone is doing something for the right reasons, and we can sense that, or at least they're trying to, even if it's not quite there yet. And so I think that's what moves me. Do I sense that I can trust this individual long term, that I can, I can follow them, and vice versa. Are they open to it being a mutual conversation respectfully, if it's appropriate in that kind of setting with me?
Yeah.
Hopefully that speaks to some of that.
A lot of it. Yes. It was making me think about, I was thinking about what you said about that extension cord.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what that means for me too, because I mean, so many things are coming to my head, like I'm sure growing up as a trained musician, growing up with classical music, learning how to, is very traditional. It's very about, the structure, and there are patterns and rules that you follow and all that stuff. And this is how it goes. If you set a tempo and then someone goes off tempo, it's like you're throwing us off. You know what I mean? We got to do the same time. But it is nice, like you were saying in the beginning, to just go off and improvise, which is why we have jazz, and just something comes out of nowhere because it's being birthed from your soul and it's pure. And it's like, wow, what is this? It's unexpected, those surprises. But then I was thinking about what you said in terms of just being introduced to people on your path. You didn't say these words, but I'm paraphrasing. Like they serve a purpose, and I think to some respect, everyone is trying their best. So my best differs from person to person. I do think that everyone is trying their best, and maybe it is just about, like you said, feeling the vibe. Maybe the vibe is right for this season, for this reason, and then in another season you're ready to explore something else, and because you're also attracting, and sometimes we need to look at that, like what are we attracting and why? Because if you're attracting things that you feel are inauthentic, how are you being inauthentic? Or you know what I'm saying? Those.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And with that, who's to say, and I don't want my statement to come off as in a hierarchical way, but who's to say that we're not supposed to spend time with those individuals and vice versa? Who's to say that anyone doesn't have lessons to offer anyone else? So again, for whatever reason, these folks have come into our lives when they have. Um, and that's a gift that hopefully we're taking the time to listen to, observe, see. Going back to just briefly on the jazz versus kind of classical traditions, jazz settings are very often small settings. There's a lot of individuality. There's a lot of social identity construction in that process. There's creativity. There's people creating essentially their own songs, their own music in the moment, versus the more Western classical traditions where it's a lot of replication, reproducing, interpretation. Not that there's not a lot of creativity there, but for me, jazz and how it's connected to voice activation and us eventually, feeling comfortable enough to create our own music or to, pray in our own personal way. I don't see those as different. Our own personal prayers will not be the same as anyone else's because of the complexity of our lives. And so if you connect that to music in some ways, you can see how at some point or another, it is inevitable that we will pray in a unique way. And if we're into music, hopefully that translates into, um, and if that's a path that you want to go down, creating your own music. I'm in the early phases of my compositional journey. And I'm in my head too much about it, I have these songs that I love to sing, that really allow me to feel like I am in state, and that I can pray with, and that are very personal. And um, I what's inevitable for me is I need to eventually start to create my own, and it's like any language acquisition. We learn for a while until we can just be comfortable with speaking back and forth in an improvisational way. So just going back to the jazz example, the jazzers really have it figured out in terms of the bigger picture. And for me, it's just the next level of these more Western traditions. And, to not be a jazz musician here in the States um, is a shame because it's one of the things that makes us uniquely American, and that social identity piece of that.
I hadn't thought about that before, but yeah, I guess. And I have to introduce you to Matthew. He's a musician. He's a composer, and he was telling me, because I asked him, how do you start composing your music? Like, what's your process? And he's like, yeah, I'll just be sitting in meditation, and then all of a sudden I'll just, maybe I start with, oh, and he just lets it, and then things start coming. And so it does come for him through the voice. And I'm curious because I saw you also play sound bowls, and I want to know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the sound bowls.
Yeah. That started to make its way into my life towards the end of my college years. And then right around 2019, actually 2020 going into 2021, I was just moved to, I went to a sound bath. Was what happened on the beach, South Beach. Friday mornings, there are always sound bath right around 3rd Street, led by Jared. And so I was at one of his sound baths. I eventually spent more time with Jared. So I was in his sound bath. I experienced it and I said, oh my God, this is kind of what I'm already doing. I've been studying yoga and I've been doing music. Why aren't I doing some of this? So I reached out to him and then he told me, oh, in a few months, I'm going to start doing these modules, these courses. So eventually I spent more time with him and a cohort of other folks that were interested in some of these ways. And one of my favorite exercises is what you just described with your musician friend. What was his name? With
Matthew.
Matthew. And so Jairus had us all lay down in a circle with our heads towards each other, and one person would start, and then it just evolved, and everybody just kind of played off of. But our eyes were closed. It was just a very open-ended, just go for it. So it
Mm-hmm.
became a symphony of sorts, and I came
Mm.
into this circle towards the beginning of the circle, and now I think it's the Miami Sound Institute or the Miami Sound Bath Orchestra. It's one of these things. And so
Mm.
it's just a little bit of pride that I have with that specific group of people. I got to spend time with them in the early phases of what that became. And now, they've got events where they're servicing like 500, 600 people, and it's like 25 sound bath people on the beach. Sometimes they're mic'd. Jared, it's a mean didgeridoo player, plays a didgeridoo like nobody's business. So, yeah, I got to spend a little time with him. I took a number of courses with him, and then I started to weave prayer songs into how I was offering. So little by little, I accumulated gear. I started providing these services, and now they're a part of what I do, especially in Indiana. That was not as common. I think Indianapolis is starting, the conscious community is starting to kind of bloom in ways that it wasn't the case when I first got there. And it's definitely developed in Miami. So now there's all sorts of folks out there doing all sorts of different things.
That's exciting. I got myself some sound bowls too. I feel like it's a obvious progression,
Yeah,
especially if you're a musician.
yeah. And there's also a natural hierarchy to the bowls, and with music and with tension and 1 and 5. And I think that in a lot of ways, because we are vibrational beings, using those tools can help folks ultimately be supported in a really safe way for them to discover and process whatever they need to process. Because I think these instruments, some instruments will pierce through, I think, different layers, different sheaths of our skin, of our body, our physical body, energetic body, mental, emotional. And so sometimes you hear certain instruments and you hear different things, and they just kind of just cut right through. I also will say, I think lyrics and words can also be really important in this process of us being in a really delicate sound space. Um, I think sometimes that helps guide, which is why we hear other kinds of prayer songs with words that are very specific towards something and not just too open ended. My understanding is that sometimes if it's too open ended, um, it can leave you like without solutions. It can kind of leave you in a little bit of a vicious circle or not. I don't know if hypnosis is the right word, or but
It's like
yeah, we're
with it leaves you needing to integrate. What'd you say?
yeah. I feel like it ends up being a little too general, whether or not we understand it um, on on an intellectual level. But if the person is intending it, then it in some ways can probably do more good than if there were no words whatsoever. So it's this balance. I'm still
Hmm.
figuring it all out for myself, but I've tried to be specific about some of the words that I choose to use when I use words in those spaces, and hopefully
Yeah.
they can help guide people.
It makes me think a lot about I guess it depends the context and the situation. I really enjoy sometimes listening to music with no words because then I can
Mm-hmm.
just allow what's coming up for me to surface without being interrupted by, no, this is what you need to focus on. It's like, okay, give me the space to let it come up. But then, in a lot of these ceremony spaces, you have the
Mm-hmm.
like the cantos that are they serve a very specific purpose. It's like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna cleanse. So these words are meant to help you cleanse, or we're gonna shake things up, and these words are meant to. So yeah, like you said, it is a balance and just finding the right timing and
And
placement.
I'm also I've devoted almost my whole life to instrumental music, you know, without words. And so, so much of it is just so moving, Yeah, there's just melodies where you're just, oh, I heard a Mozart second movement the other day. I feel like all piano concertos, the second movements are just, so much. But so yes, definitely, and I think from my perspective on the professional side of things, hopefully folks are showing up to a concert hall to an experience and able to process and just given an opportunity to just be still for 30 minutes, an hour at a time, and process what you got to process. Hopefully you're enjoying the story that we're also trying to tell through the music. If it's programmatic or even if it's not programmatic, sometimes we hint at certain things, but yeah, hopefully that is the case for people. Um, so for me, it's all kind of connected, and for me, it's all a prayer of some sort. Whether it's very specific to cleansing, or specific to the challenges that someone struggled with when they were in a concentration camp, years ago. And then you can, that carries through in both of those instances, when it is to purify and when it is to express something that there are sometimes no words for, then there's that side of it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as a vocalist, that comes out for me, like it's in the beginning when I would write music, I'm a vocalist. So there would always be lyrics, because what else am I going to do? But I find that, sometimes there really just are no words. And I just end up oohing and eyeing and just like really giving myself, surrendering to that. And it took me a while coming from this place of like, you need lyrics to just let myself feel the sound and let it come out without needing to put a label on it. Yeah. And I really resonated with what I really want to try that exercise. Something about, and I think that's why I like the sound bowls so much, that vibration. And when you can vibrate in harmony with the voice, like for me, I nerd out on that. Okay. I just like, I feel all the feels everywhere. My hair, like even though the hair is dead, let's say the hair is dead, my hair is feeling all the feels, like it's so powerful. And then those frequencies, like you can see this on how vibration affects water, or if you've ever seen those speakers that they put sand on it and you see how they turn into these different shapes. It's like that really does happen to us internally, since we are 60% water, whatever the percentage is. It changes every time I look it up. But yeah.
And with people, like if we are those individual notes, and we are, in this case, it's you and I, and it's two notes, those two notes come into harmony in different ways. And when there's a lot of other individuals in place, that also comes into its own harmony or its own dissonance and resolves. And so it's all, I don't mean to be cliche about it's all connected, but on a vibrational level, it is relevant, and we are coming into harmony, and ultimately, I think all these practices, what they do is they help us refine and tune ourselves a little bit more, so that our tool that we are can be of service, and in really meaningful ways and relevant ways, for whatever we're serving, and to a certain extent, for whatever it needs to be, for that particular chapter of our own life.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I just remembered this temazcal that we did in Mexico. I think it was 2017 or 18. And we were a group of about 8. And it was very dark in the temazcal. We just start singing. Like the shaman was in there kind of just keeping the tempo with, I don't even know if he was clapping or if he was shaking something. And we each took turns sharing something, singing something. And a lot of people in there were not singers, like they were like, no, I don't sing, but they felt comfortable. And so we each had a platform to express ourselves as individuals. And then at the end, we were all singing together in harmony. And the sound in that place, like what you were saying, it makes you think. And it's not that you can't be who you are individually, but in a group, in the collective, like, am I being too much? Am I being too soft? Am I pushing? Am I overshadowing somebody else? Like, where you find that balance where it just clicks and everything feels like, I can't even describe it. It's just like, you know what I mean? I know you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
People watching this are going to be like, what is going on here?
A nice rule of thumb, I think, is being able to hear the two people next to you, as you know. If you can hear both of them while still expressing in a way in which hopefully they can hear you, and there's no one that's overly sticking out, unless they're leading, or they're an elder, or there's a specific reason why that voice needs to be highlighted. But yeah, that's what it's about. That's the best. And for me, it's, you were talking about how at the beginning of the call, how sometimes we overly correct, or feel like we need to put a stop on something if it's not perfect or in a particular way. But no, that what you just described, and its imperfection sometimes, and its authenticity, and its vulnerability, and the courage, um, and the spirit to be able to, in some cases, like literally spirits, but the courage to just get out of your box a bit, or remember, maybe there is a song that my mother sang to me when I was little, or a family member shared with me at one point that I can share in this space, and this is a safe space to do that. And for me, this kind of goes back to the voice activation side of things. It's just kind of getting our vagus nerve, and in vibration and connecting with our body a little bit more than we typically do. And so the nonverbal, going back to the instrumental, can actually be quite powerful. And for me, and I think my partners know this about me. Nonverbal is very important. And not in those sounds. In like the most wholesome kind of way. It doesn't need to be words sometimes. It's just sometimes that's what the lover is, and that's what the lover sounds like for so much of us. I think I hear sometimes the lover come out of different people, and that's what it sounds like. It's usually a of some sort. So yeah, so that can be quite powerful, and transformative, healing, safe, and that's what we usually look for, I think, when we seek partners, that openness to receive us in that way.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. The whole reason Israel and I even got together was because he showed me his goofiness.
Oh.
Like, this might not be an issue for many people, but listen, growing up in Miami and just growing up the way that I did, I had to be a certain way. It meant I couldn't be goofy or silly or anything other than, like a woman. And so when I had that, I was like, oh my God, I can let this part of me be seen. And you like it? Oh my God, it was great. It was, yes. So yes to that. I want to get into the stretching. And I want to tie it into the sound, because sound is very powerful. And let's say you're having a very powerful sound session, whether with sound bowls or with vocals or with any other kind of instrumentals, things get shaken up. And like you said, if there's no lyric to guide you, you could get stuck in the ether, so to speak. But there is another way through body work to help bring you back and ground you. So how did you decide to go in the direction of stretching and assisted stretching?
Yeah, so it was already a part of the yoga practice. But growing up, I always said to myself, I think I want to explore massage. And I think I want to dive into understanding what I can do to help someone's body feel better generally. So I went to go do my doc in Indiana, and I was looking for extra work at the time. And there was a job opening for assisted stretching. And one of the qualifications were that you had to be a music teacher, a yoga teacher, or a personal trainer, or or massage therapist, and the list went on. So I applied. I wish I would have applied sooner because I was going through it financially, and if I would have got the gig sooner, it would have helped my partner and I at the time. So I went and I got certified. It was an intensive process, very hands-on. And there were so many hours that I spent receiving stretches, which was lovely. I would fall asleep sometimes during my training towards the end of it. Julie Dobson, my one of my guides in these ways, she just had a way of carrying us, through the process, and in a really gentle way. I've had really great music teachers like that too, Um, anyways, so these assisted stretching, I would describe them as in line with like the Thai massage tradition, where there are deep stretches, but as deep as the individual wants. We usually have a scale that we like to work within. And these stretches also include neuromuscular facilitation, which allows us to deepen the stretch, allow us to sustain for a while, push back, and it gives folks an opportunity to also develop strength while we're in the stretching process. So they're elongated stretches. We usually go through most of the big muscle groups throughout the body, or whatever the client is needing at the time. Sometimes what they don't need as well, we make them aware of. Usually most of us have really tight adductors, and our hamstrings, and how it's connected to the sciatic nerve just tends to struggle, and usually pulls on the low back, and that's why a lot of folks have back pains. So all these different things, we'll go through everything. When I was working with the company, I would work with clients for 25 minutes to 50 minutes, and we go through either half of their body or their full body, and try to do as much as we can. I was also teaching yoga at the same time, and so what I started to do was incorporate these assisted stretches into my yoga classes. So my yoga classes started becoming me going one by one in my classes. And I think folks came to the class for that kind of thing because they appreciated it. Even though it was safe, we had these little stones that you could put facing up or down, depending on if you needed some more space today. Or, you were hoping to just get a little bit deeper in some of these. In addition to props, I love props. I love blocks. I love walls, anything that can help in this process. Struggling with sleeping last night, so I had my legs at the wall. It was okay. It wasn't that helpful, but usually that's a good one, for insomnia.
Yeah.
So so that's evolved over the years. That's become a part of my services. I got to dip into some massage techniques. I talked about Julie before. She's an incredible massage therapist, and that was kind of her way, her own personal touch on assisted stretching. We all brought our own thing. For me, I think some of the yoga and the breathing really was a game changer with the assisted stretching. And so, it's continuing to evolve. And I'm no longer with that company. It's been, we're approaching almost a year, or a little over 9 months. So I'm hoping to do more of that on my own. And hopefully in these spaces, maybe there are individuals that, as I mentioned, might be not as motivated to stretch on their own. I'll do the work for you, and, or are trying to get over some serious physical challenges, or trying to just level up in terms of sports performance. We can get into all of it, and it's always nice. I don't know. I've never met anyone that hasn't been willing to receive one. And I'm always excited to receive. So if anyone wants to trade out there, please do let me know.
I love to get adjustments, and I don't think I've ever experienced assisted stretching that was officially called that, but I have had a Thai massage, and that was amazing. That was amazing. And yeah, it just feels really good. Something about, like, if I were to put my shoulders behind my back and say, okay, now bring your shoulders and, really bring them together. You're going to experience that one way, versus if someone comes and they bring their hands to your shoulders and they pull them for you, you're going to experience a whole new world, And yeah.
If I was to put my finger on it, the point in which things shifted for me and I started to be of service, I think in the most hearty ways, was when I started doing assisted stretching, because I had people coming in there that were as young as 8 years old up to around 80 with all sorts of mobility issues. And, but when you have an elderly woman in your hands, and you're just like, oh my God, like I have to just take care of you. And this cannot be about anything other than you right now. That, that was, a beautiful set of lessons. And, um, as a male, I think, transparently, sometimes you have clients that are quite attractive, especially like early on in the process. And then at some point it shifts, and you just, it's not about that. You have to like get your head out of the gutter and just be present in the moment with this person's, real needs. And so that was, really important for me, that time that I spent doing that work, and, that outlet. I think it's made me a better facilitator, a better server, and all these, different ways.
What's some of the transformations that people have shared with you as a result of your assisted stretching?
Mm-hmm. A lot less pain in general, a lot less, back pain. Hamstrings in particular are always tight. And so when we say we're going to focus on this for the next few weeks, and you're able to touch your toes, or you're able to get a little bit further than you could, when you started the session right away, and you can see it. And you know how over time that helps. Apart from that, you and I can probably relate to how having a stretch routine is also really great for our mind and our focus, and being able to get a lot accomplished. So that's also been, a recurring theme with folks that come to us often, and that used to come to us often. How productivity was just, I don't want to say through the roof, but much higher, because they took time to tune their physical body, or have someone help them with that. There is, an older woman, Andrea, that was recovering from, hip surgery, and essentially ran out of PT. And so she would come to us and spend time with us, and we were able to reinforce what was already happening. So in a lot of ways, that PT was able to continue for her. So those are a few, and also just being present with the breath, and the power of breathing, for 50 minutes straight, in a consistent way, without having to worry about, some of the other challenges that were happening in the day to day. That was usually, it just felt like when they were with us, they were able to just kind of, I don't know if check out was the right thing, but, or the best way to describe it, but, they were able to
Surrender.
just be, yeah, surrender, be carried a little bit, be supported, important self care, cops, all sorts of different jobs. My favorite client, was a priest, and he was just very, very open minded, and we laughed a lot together. And his hamstrings got way, way, looser over the time, and his back pains were alleviated. So, um, yeah, Richard.
That's cool. Well, I mean, how do you envision yourself co-creating at retreats? Because I mean, it sounds like there's a whole lot that you could
Mhm.
co-create. There's a lot to play with.
Yeah.
But what does it look like
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, I think a part of the conversation is also figuring out what the client, or the community of individuals needs and is interested in doing. Because I want that to be relevant to what their needs are. I wouldn't want to push in and say, hey, this is what you need. But what that could look like generally is, on the yoga side of things, they can be yoga classes, that incorporate some of these assisted, experiences, and kind of a larger group setting. Though that can also be a one-on-one, basis. There are these, um, there are these bigger classes that are happening, but also one-on-one sessions that are happening with individuals, um, throughout the day. Everyone has an opportunity to do a few one-on-ones throughout the retreat. Voice activations, are also possible. So we talked a little bit about different individuals, openly expressing themselves in safe spaces. Maybe learning simple songs and just getting to the groove of singing and using the voice, and how that can positively help, um, how we express ourselves, and how we communicate with people in our day to day in business. The sound bath experiences can also be really nurturing. And I usually my yoga classes usually incorporate a longer extended shavasana towards the end, which allows folks to also process And so sometimes the sound bath makes its way into that shavasana space, or it can be an extended shavasana, potentially with some of these, prayer songs roped into them, after going through a class with assisted stretching in it. So in a lot of ways, the music and wellness, I've just tried to allow them to be paired next to each other, and in a lot of ways, we're tending to the physical body, and we're tending to how we express ourselves musically with our voice. So
Yeah, the energetic
anything that
body,
falls into
for
those two
sure.
categories.
And why retreats?
Yeah, I feel like my time on this earth has to be spent wisely, and I hope to spend as much time as I can with different people from everywhere. I'd love to just continue to connect with different communities, different individuals, and so I really loved my time in Miami and spending time there, and I've developed a community there, and Indiana, and now this East Bay area. So the more time I spend somewhere, the more I want to get to know people here. This feels like a very international place where I'm at right now. And I don't know, I feel like there's a beauty um, in coming to love someone that and care for someone that you just met, a stranger, recently. So that's what I think it's about, being able to be love like that, and so I
Mm.
think this is a way I can do that. I also, see myself traveling and sharing music and sharing all these things that I've been learning all my life in all these different places. Hopefully, it can be in really focused ways so that we can help those communities, and figure out how to, also allow it to contribute to clean water and to food and to all the other things that are higher up on the hierarchy of needs. So this is, I'm really grateful for the impact that it's had on my life, music and wellness and these traditions, and I'm hoping to continue to share that.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to share?
I think we covered most of it. We spent all this time talking about me mostly, and I just, I wonder if there's anything else that came up for you, or anything that we didn't get to that maybe we had to skip over because we were focused on me today. So
We're focused on you today. I mean, I'm here.
yeah.
I'm sharing a lot. Um, no, I mean, what just popped up, and we didn't skip over anything. I've been actively responding as much as possible because this has been really fun for me, especially since, and this is what just popped up. We have similar paths, and lots of mutual friends have pointed it out various times to me. And often I have wondered, like, what does it look like to pair music with wellness? And I know what it looks like if I look around and see what other people are doing. But I've been wanting to find, like, what does that look like for me? So it's more like just something for me to ponder and sit with. But
Yeah,
listening to how you're using it is inspiring some ideas.
yeah. Anytime we connect, over the years and the brief moments that we have, usually I do walk away with um lessons, and things that I also need to look into. So hopefully this can continue to be a conversation, and we can kind of walk side by side. Maybe you lead, I lead different moments. And hopefully it's like that with everybody and everything that we decide to do. That's what it's about. Like I don't want to be dragged. Um, I don't
Oh.
I don't want to do the dragging. Um, and not to say that we're not willing to support people in the ways that they need to be supported in different points of their lives, but I think we want it to be in the bigger picture, self-sufficient and not codependent. But
Yeah.
everyone's strong, and we want people to be the warriors that they are, in their own lives.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, my friend, thank you for being here and having this lovely chat with me today.
Likewise, thank you again for taking the time to listen and to see me in these ways.
My pleasure.